Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. This is the format called Freedom for the Win, the top 3 wins for individual liberty and American values. Each Freedom for the Win segment does 3 things. Number 1, it gives us some good news in an ocean of negativity. Number 2, it helps us celebrate the wins. And number 3, it gives us hope that we can save America from the leftist mob. So let's go. Here are the top freedom wins for the week ending April 21st, 2023. Win number 1. Riley Gaines praises Lions GM for wearing hoodies supporting women and girls in sports. Well, Brad Holmes made the statement during a pre-NFL draft press conference. During this press conference, Detroit Lions general manager Brad Holmes wore a sweatshirt with a strong message. The black shirt was donned with a Lions logo on the chest, with a, quote, support women and girls in sports, end quote, written across. The message caught the eye of Riley Gaines, who's fighting for fairness in girls and women's sports, going against transgender females battling against biological girls in all sports. Well, this is a huge win, because when leaders are courageous enough to stand up publicly for truth, it encourages all of us who may be afraid to take a stand as well. And I'll tell you this, I love it when I see men of courage, men in positions of leadership, willing to take a stand, especially as it pertains to protecting girls and female athletes. Win number 2. The House passes a bill to ban transgender women and girls from school sports teams. House Republicans on Thursday passed a bill that seeks to prohibit transgender women and girls from participating in female athletic programs, moving this issue to the national stage that has thus far mainly played out in state legislatures and individual sports associations. We've talked a lot about this topic, but this legislation, titled the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, passed in a party line 219 to 203 vote. It's the first standalone bill to restrict the rights of transgender people considered in the House. Now, interestingly enough, I don't think it restricts the rights of transgender people. I think it actually protects the rights of our female athletes, our girls and women who are biologically female. Well, of course, the Democratic-controlled Senate, however, is unlikely to take up the measure, and the White House has issued a veto threat. The bill, which failed to advance during the last 3 sessions of Congress, would amend Title IX. Title IX is important for the protection of female rights in sports and female access to activities. It prevents sex-based discrimination in education entirely. But what's cool about this, it would amend Title IX to recognize sex as that which is, quote, based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. We agree. Well, at least 21 states since 2020 have enacted laws or policies that prevent transgender athletes from participating on sports teams consistent with their gender identity. And there's more than 40 such bills have been introduced in state legislatures across the country this year. This is really important. It's important that we handle this at a legislative level to protect girls and women in sports. This is about protecting women's sports now and into the future. And as Representative Beth Van Dyne said from Texas, biological women and girls should only be competing against each other. In other words, other biological women and girls. And she goes on to say, and I don't care how many surgeries you have, I don't care how many chemicals you put in your body, you're not going to be a biological woman. You know what? We happen to agree with that. And we also know, of course, that there is a distinct competitive advantage for biological boys. It's been proven and demonstrated by numerous studies. The administration earlier this month, in a set of proposed changes to Title IX, criticized policies that broadly ban transgender athletes from competing on sports teams consistent with their gender identity. LGBTQ rights groups have broadly condemned the measure, which they say discriminates against transgender people. And the legislation has also been rejected by women's rights organizations, including the National Women's Law Center and Women's Sports Foundation. Well, of course they have, because they no longer represent truth and they no longer represent women. Well, this is a win. Even though this will never make it through the Senate or survive a presidential veto, because it forces people to take a stand publicly, either for or against protecting women and girls in sports. It's a win simply because it's the right thing to do to protect our girls and all of female sports from unfair and unsafe competition against biological males. We agree. Okay, win number 3. The NHL commissioner hints that the league could end Pride Night events amid growing number of opt-outs. Well, the NHL commissioner, Gary Bettman, recently noted that the league might begin reevaluating the idea of holding gay pride nights with the increasing number of players and teams opting out either for religious or foreign pressure reasons. Many players have cited their personal religious beliefs for opting out of wearing gay pride jerseys. And Commissioner Bettman has defended the decision to opt out. But the growing number of those choosing to do so is forcing the league to face a dilemma, and Bettman noted that the issue is something the NHL will have to evaluate in the off-season. To date, at least 3 teams have opted out of the gay pride jerseys. First, the Chicago Blackhawks. Previous to that, it was Minnesota Wild. And, of course, the New York Rangers. This is a win because we believe in freedom, not force. In America, no one should be forced or coerced into supporting an ideology that conflicts with their religious beliefs or conscience. So there you go. Millions of Americans are waking up to the reality that if they want to preserve freedom in America, they have to take a courageous stand. And when we do this, freedom wins. We all win, and we preserve the greatest nation in the world. I'm Jimmy Page, and this is the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast for the win.